Welcome, everybody, to another Haven of Horror review. I am Subject879, and in a record 2 weeks in a row, we have Thedayghost. How you doing,
What's
buddy?
up, everybody? I'm good. How are you doing?
Not too bad. Watched a couple movies that you put together for us to review that I had never seen, and they were kind of on. You know how everybody has that list of shame of movies they've never seen, but they really should because they're like classics? These two movies are on there. So we're going to start with the 1988 The Blob, directed by Chuck Russell, and I think written by Frank Darabont, right?
Yep.
So, since you're the master of shittily explaining movie summaries, tell us about The Blob.
Oh God. The Blob. I mean, what can you even really say about the Blob? The Blob is just like the ultimate, not like alien invasion thing, but just like alien thing lands in town, shenanigans ensue. And it's just, you know, the Blob lands into a small town, and it eats people. That's what it do.
That's what it do. So, Frank Darabont, obviously, we should talk about a little bit because he's kind of a brilliant filmmaker that never gets the recognition he deserves. Um, for anyone who's unaware, he worked on Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Mist, the first season of The Walking Dead. Am I missing anything?
He did a whole Stephen King trilogy. The Mist is only his third King film. He did Green Mile and Shawshank Redemption as well.
Right, I was just listing his horror movies though.
Oh, okay. We were just like, this is what he's done, and then missed like two of his biggest
But
things.
yeah, so the point is that Frank Darabont is awesome, and this was his big movie that I had not seen. Um, Mostly practical or all practical effects in this movie, which is what really sells this movie because this isn't about the plot and telling like a real story. It's about fun. This is a fun movie. If you find fun in watching people be horribly absorbed by this giant slime ball thing.
It took a creature that was just Jello in the original '50s movie and like makes it scary. And they do make fun of the Jello thing in the movie, but yeah, it's just kind of it. It's just making like an actual scary movie out of this premise.
And I gotta
Um,
tell you, the idea of being absorbed by something horrifies me. So this movie was definitely horrifying, but I was also like glued to my screen the whole time.
yeah, and the Blob looks great outside of, I think it goes like they didn't have the money to do what they were going for in the third act. I think it falls flat a little bit there. There's definitely some shots where it's like, ooh, that does not look good.
There was some color
um,
grading issues in the copy that I watched. A few shots where the main two characters are like running from the blob. It looks like they like superimposed the blob into the shot or something, and like the color grading.
yeah, there's places where it reminds me of like Ghostbusters too. With like the kind of slime in that movie. And yeah, specifically when it's like the giant blob, I don't think they had the money to kind of do what they were trying to do. As opposed, because I hold The Thing, and The Fly in kind of similar regard, in that they're like all three are remaking '50s movies, but now like we're kind of going like a bit more grotesque and like kind of more like body horror in a sense, but also just like more graphic and violent and more effects heavy. And I
More
think out
awesome.
of yeah, and I think out of the three, this is kind of the step down in terms of that. In that the other two, I don't think there's any flaws in their effects. While this one, it's more so in the third act, like I said.
Well, this one also is very different, not only effects wise, but tonally from the other two movies that you mentioned. Whereas those are very serious horror films. This knows it's goofy and
Got more of
embraces
like a
that.
fun adventure kind of feel in places.
Yeah, and did you give like maybe a hint of satire, especially at the beginning?
Maybe like a hint of it, I guess. Like just in the terms of, we're kind of playing with some of those older like '50s kind of like plot details.
Mhm.
But
Well, because
it's not like full Slither, because this is the type of movie that I think Slither is kind of paying homage to. So like I don't think it's as far as say that in terms of like comedy. But yeah, there's definitely like hints of it.
right, and I don't mean full out comedy. I mean more like because you got the kid that's like obsessed with horror movies, and then he meets a real life monster. The mom is
Which
so
is what you did back in the 80s.
well, but then the thing that made me think of satire was mostly the mom, like how over the top she was. Or maybe I'm just reading too much into it, but also the stuff with the military felt very satirical. You know, of course, they'd want to capture it, make a weapon out of it. But again, that
Well,
might
they
be just
made
me.
it, yeah.
Um, yeah, which was interesting because I always just assumed it literally fell from the sky. Uh,
I think in the original it does. I think that was a twist made for this movie.
that makes sense. Also, can we just applaud this movie for having the balls to kill a kid and like show it dying?
Yeah, it gets like really graphic with that part.
Yeah, because like the
It's
kid
kind of
pops out of
it's
the
the
water,
Jason shot, right? Where he comes out of the water.
but he's like disintegrating and shit. Oh god, you know when you think about it, and because I get very like invested if I'm liking a movie, like I'm like getting in the characters' heads and everything, and I'm just like, oh god, that's gotta be a painful way to die.
Oh yeah. Well, even you know, the guy so like the main character, I guess you could say like she's the main character. Her like boyfriend gets eaten by the blob at the start, and that character is like the hero character of the original. That's how this movie kind of, you know, flips it around. Um,
And an
and
awesome
like his
shot, by
death.
the way.
Yeah, where it just kind of like it all like lands on him, and it just melts away his face.
The movie got me there because I figured he and her were going to be the main characters. And like I mentioned to you before, the main girl in this is Shawnee Smith, who most modern horror fans would know from the Saw franchise, um, where she played Jigsaw's first, like, not assistant, what's the word? Apprentice.
Booty call. Oh,
No. Like, you've seen the first Saw, right? So the girl that's in that reverse bear trap, the famous reverse bear trap, that's her.
oh okay.
And she's in the first three. And then she's also in the 90s TV movie The Stand, which is awesome. I want to do a video on that at some point, but I'm weary about asking people to do that because it's like 6 hours long.
Jesus.
And I thought she was really good. I thought she carried a lot of like humanity to this film. I
Yeah,
was
no,
kind of whatever about the
I like
guy.
the actress more. Oh, okay. Kevin Dillon, Matt Dillon's brother.
Yeah, he was just kind of generic, like, I'm a badass. I don't care about nobody.
Yeah, he's the '50s greaser in the '80s movie.
He was fine. I was like, I really don't care if this guy lives, but I want Shawnee Smith to live.
That's funny. When on Sunday when I watched this with my friend, he was like, I wish Kevin Dillon got to do more movies. And I was like, I guess, I don't know.
But yeah, and so when that shot comes up, which that's the shot like everybody uses for their thumbnail, where he's like reaching out, but he's got the like covered in the blob. Uh, Great shot.
Yeah,
And
and
I
his
was just like,
arm melts
oh
off.
yeah, she pulls his arm off. It's great.
You know, when you see, because the blob like lands in like a homeless person, it goes onto his arm, and you know the main girl, her boyfriend that gets killed, and Kevin Dillon's character, I'll take him to the hospital, and then they like find his corpse a bit later on, and like it's been like melted away, like here down. That part's crazy. Like that's definitely where the like effects in this movie shine.
And the blob always looks good, which is interesting because obviously it's just like a bunch of homemade stuff mixed together to make a pink gelatin thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure like what it exactly like they used to make the blob in this movie, but it looks very like organic.
I
It
read
almost reminds me
somewhere.
of like when you see like oysters or something like that kind of like look.
So I remember reading about this. I've got the Wikipedia page pulled up. The blob creature, the special effects team used silk bags filled with methyl cellulose thickening agent for food, which is what like the main blob.
Okay.
And then another interesting thing to note as well is the Reverend in this movie also played in Beware the Blob, which was a sequel to that original film.
Oh, okay, interesting. The like really creepy looking Reverend.
Yeah, Reverend Meeker, who it seemed like they were setting up to be a bad guy for a sequel.
Yeah, it's got just kind of that like cliffhanger thing.
We should also note this movie bombed at the box
Oh, I
office.
didn't know that.
So its budget was 10 million. It made 8 million.
Oof. That
Yeah.
sucks.
I didn't know that either, but yeah, that would explain why they never got a sequel. They didn't even make their
Yeah,
money back.
exactly.
Which, although that to be more impressive with this movie, it was made for 10 million, and I don't remember what movie. I don't know what
Hey,
like the
that was
budget for The Fly or anything was, but
yeah, that was back before we made movies that weren't like 100, $200 million at minimum.
I mean, there's pros and cons, right? Okay, so the budget for The Fly was between 9 and 15
9
million.
to 15, yeah. Although that doesn't have the scale that this one does.
That is true. Which is it's actually funny because I thought The Fly would be more low budget because it's only got like 1 or 2 locations, but that's for another video. Oh, so also to mention as well, because we mentioned that Frank Darabont worked on Nightmare on Elm Street 3. This is also directed by the guy who directed Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
Okay, I didn't realize that either. Interesting.
He also directed The Scorpion King.
Well, I liked that movie a lot as a kid. I'm sure it doesn't hold up, but
Yeah, me too. So yeah, I mean Chuck Russell. Just looking at his filmography, he had an interesting one. Okay, my mind is blown right now. So Chuck Russell directed A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Blob. Can you guess what his very next movie was? The Mask.
I have no idea. Oh, weird.
Wow, this guy created one of my favorite childhood films. It's a shame he hasn't had more work.
Because then he made The Scorpion King.
I mean, he didn't make another movie for 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, longer than that.
That's because The Mask was like in development hell for like, or The Mask 2, I should say. He probably worked on that at first. I would guess. Because that was in development hell for like 10 years.
Yeah, the next movie he directed after The Scorpion King was 2016. You had a good run there, Chuck Russell.
With the Blob too, you also get there's like the waitress character and the like sheriff, which they kind of like set up as like a couple, and they both get killed like pretty early on. And the waitress's death is like really awesome. That's probably one of like the best horror scenes in the movie.
I was also sad because I liked her. But refresh my memory because I don't remember the sheriff dying. How does he die?
So she calls. She's in like a phone booth, and the Blob is like around the phone booth, and she calls like the police, and she's like, "Oh, send the sheriff." And the secretary at the police station, she's like, "Oh, like the sheriff already went there," and then like the waitress looks up, and the sheriff's like decomposing body is like floating around the phone
Oh,
booth.
is that who that? Okay, I didn't realize that was the sheriff. Who also we should mention is a Frank Darabont regular. He is in The Mist and The Walking Dead, and I think The Green Mile, but it's been a while.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because Frank Darabont had obviously a lot of friends that he brought onto The Walking Dead, and then that's why all the major characters from the comic books died. Because when they screwed Frank Darabont over, they were like, "I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore." God, I hate The Walking Dead. The show. I love the comic. But yeah, and it's well paced. This movie. I was never bored.
It's always moving and getting bigger. What did you think of the scene with the like kind of football boyfriend guy's like friend when they're at like makeout point or whatever in the car?
Oh my god, dude! I was like, what the fuck? But then I was like, that's awesome.
He's got a bar set up in his trunk.
Yeah, and then like the Blob somehow hollows out his girlfriend and like enters her, so that when he goes back to make out, she's like a dried up husk with the Blob inside it. Yeah, all deaths were cool in this movie. Um, I liked the tone. I miss that kind of tone in horror movies. Everything's so serious now, you know. It's like, remember when horror used to be fun?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I miss low
Definitely
budget.
something that moved away. Yeah, moved away from. Unfortunately,
Same Raimi, your only hope. Uh,
nah, he's tight at Marvel now. We're not getting any more of that.
I don't know. Evil Dead Rise. I want to have hope. I need a trailer though.
I got no hope. I think there's talks of remaking the Blob too.
There have been talks. So that's the other thing I wanted to mention. Glad you brought it up. There have been talks since at least as far as I know, at least 2005. Do you know who was originally attached to the remake of the Blob?
Is that Tim
Rob
Burton?
Zombie.
Oh, thank God we missed out on that.
That was supposed to be his next project after Halloween.
Oh, thank Christ. Although then he made Halloween too, so like double-edged sword, I guess. But
I would
still,
have rather seen his Blob. Like his Halloween 2 is the worst. I would have been
that's awful.
because he had a few projects around that time that like kind of sounded cool on paper. Like he had a T-Rex movie that he wanted to do. Um, he was supposed to do the Blob. Uh, I like. Okay, so this is gonna sound contradictory. I'm perfectly fine with him never remaking it because I think this movie could potentially be as good as it gets, right? But I would also be
Mhm.
interested to see what you could do with modern technology with this movie, with this premise. It's that double-edged sword, right? Like I don't want them to remake it because this is great, but I do want them to remake it because I want to see what a director could do nowadays.
Well, yeah, it's feasibly you wouldn't have the kind of third act like effects issues nowadays. But I also could see it going the other way, where the Blob just kind of looks crappy through like most of it, like, or maybe not even crappy, but like you would never hit the highs of this movie effects wise. But I don't know, because that is definitely a thing that would be interesting to do now, because the Blob is basically just like an effects like showcase for whatever era it comes out in, right?
I
So you get the Jello of the original, this kind of like practical effects work with this movie, and then like the CGI movie now.
I have to say though, I every time the Blob popped up on screen, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie would pop into my head because I know you haven't seen that, but Ivan Ooze in that movie is also a big purple blob that takes shape into a monster. Uh, and I was like, this is what the Ivan Ooze effect should have looked like because they try to CGI it, but in '95.
Oh, oh no! It looks like Beast Wars.
I will show you after we finish recording. Um, but yeah, I overall I love this movie. It's a very simple film. We said that a lot, but I think some of the best horror is simple. Uh, do you have
Absolutely.
anything else we should cover on this film?
The theater scene is pretty cool. I like that scene.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that because I thought it was funny that you mentioned the boy as he's dying shot is very Jason like because they're watching a discount Friday the 13th movie in the theater.
Hmm. Oh yeah, no, that's definitely intentional. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Uh,
And just like the way like the blob kind of takes over the like projector or whatever, that's all great.
yeah, it's great. I think this is still special effects like powerhouse for the time it was out, for the time it came out, despite only having a $10 million budget. It's a shame it couldn't even make its budget back. Um, but this is just a fun ride. Like watch it. There's nothing really to spoil. It's just like a thrill ride for 90 minutes.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Well, Austin, I'm gonna give this a 4 out of 5 because I really enjoyed this movie.
That's also what I'm gonna give it, is 4 out of 5.
Okay, okay. Well, guys, that has been our discussion of the Blob. We kind of kept it vague just because there's not a lot of story here. It's just one set piece to another. Go watch it. I'm curious to see the original now, even though it probably doesn't hold up at all. Have you seen the original?
No, I just know that all the effects are jello, and that was also the point of time where horror was very much that like, you take your girlfriend down to the drive-in movie theater, you watch the Blob, you make out through most of it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird time. But that is all for us today on the Blob. Go watch it, and we will be back next time with a review of The Fly. Excited for that one. Have a great night, everybody.
Yeah.